Hey, what's up, guys? This is Benny Ricciardi with rotocurve.com, and I'm here with our DraftKings NBA Fades video for Wednesday, March 9th. The idea of the Fades video is we want to talk about some guys who we've seen that are pretty highly owned lately that we think are guys that we definitely don't want to have any pieces of in our tournaments tonight. Remember, you don't fade guys in cash games, so there are some of these guys who might still hit around 5x value and be a decent option for you if you wanted them to. But these are guys who we do not think are going to have the upside to help you win a tournament tonight, and they're not going to be on any of our tournament rosters. So let's call up the slideshow and talk about the three guys who are on the list today. Excuse me. Three guys who are on the list are Draymond Green at 8,200, Kristaps Porzingis at 6,500, and Mirza Teletovic at 4,900. Now, the first guy I want to talk about is Draymond. He's in a tough matchup against Utah here. Utah has forced the Warriors to play at their slowest pace so far this season. And we know that Utah is a team that plays slow. They're a very good defensive team, so it's not really a matchup that we ever try to, go after. To be perfectly honest with you, I think almost the entire Golden State Warriors team is a team that I have a little bit of, pause on using today. In Draymond's previous two meetings against the Utah Jazz, he only had 40.25 and 39.75 fantasy points. Neither one of those is going to get you to the 5x value that you need, even as a floor to use him in cash. So I definitely don't think that he's a guy I'm going to use in cash games, and I really, really am not going to be using him in any tournaments tonight. He's had 3 straight games below 40 fantasy points anyway, so he's also not really playing at his best at the moment. So with all those things mixed in together, I think Draymond Green is a guy who I feel I can safely fade today. The next guy I want to talk about is Kristaps Porzingis at 6,500. He's got a matchup with the Phoenix Suns, which seems very enticing. He's coming off an injury, and he's only playing about 20 to 25 minutes per game now over the last week or two. Robin Lopez has actually seen his role increase at Porzingis' expense, and since Lopez has been playing well, it doesn't look like the Knicks are really looking to rush Porzingis out there for 30 minutes yet. He hasn't had 40 fantasy points in over a month at this time. The last time was all the way back on February 7th. That's 10 straight games plus the game that he was injured, that he hasn't gotten you to, the upside that you would really want to need. It might seem like a very simple thing to say don't play Porzingis, but he was still 9% owned the other night. So if you're still going to get a guy that, 1/10 of the people are using on their roster that we know is, not playing well and is very unlikely to make his upside, make sure you're not one of those 9% that roll him out there. And the last guy I want to talk about is another guy who we've seen double-digit ownership on, and that's Mirza Teletovic. He's down to 4,900, which seems like an enticing price, but he's in a pace-down game against the New York Knicks. And like I said, he's been 10% plus owned as a cheap option about 2 or 3 times already in March in the 4 games that they've played. And he hasn't scored 23 fantasy points at all yet this month, let alone the 30 fantasy points that we would need in order for him to give us some upside at this price. Alex Len has seen a major increase in his role over the last couple games. He's getting more minutes. He's getting more shots. He's been on the floor a lot more often. And that has kind of come at the expense of Mirza Teletovic. So even though he has a couple big 30 and 40-point games, a couple weeks ago in his game log, I don't think that he's seeing the minutes right now where he can go and repeat that, even at this price. His price would have to come down a couple $100 more before I start considering Mirza again, considering that his upside has really been like 23, 24 points in his last 4 or 5 games. So that sums it up for the guys that we're looking at today. Those are some guys who, again, we're looking at to fade today. These are not guys that I want to have on my roster. These are not guys that I want to have any exposure to. If guys like Mirza are going to be 10% owned, or if a guy like Porzingis is still going to be on 8 to 10% of rosters, let other people make those mistakes. Let them be the ones that try to put those guys in there, hoping that today is the day. Remember, there's nothing against being contrarian. It's something that we like to do. You want to figure out who the chalk is and try to find another way to get up there. But the way to be contrarian and the way to find another way is not by taking a guy who's going to underperform. It's by taking another guy who's in a pretty good spot, but that people aren't thinking about or talking about because they're so heavily invested in the chalk. Last night was a good example. Everybody was like, oh, you need 400 points to win a game on FanDuel or DraftKings now. But last night when the big, value play like Patty Mills only puts up 15 points, finding another way off of the big value play was the way to go. If you would have used a value guy at a different position, like maybe a David West, it would have allowed you to pay up for some of the point guards who did well yesterday and not waste a roster spot on, Patty Mills. And you would have been able to come up with a big roster for, some pretty good money last night. So remember, don't get discouraged. Like we talked about yesterday, we have had some value plays who went absolutely nuts for 8 to 10x. It's not something that happens every day. When it does happen, yes, those guys at 60 or 70% are going to be on every winning roster. But when it doesn't happen like it did yesterday, the contrarian way of thinking is still one of the best ways to get to the top of the tournament. So thank you guys for joining us here at rotocurve.com. And as always, stay classy, DFS.